All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the AWD, or Application and Website Development 1100 C# programming course, I've been doing some kind of introductory videos for the chapters, and I'm through the first 8 of 22 chapters. This one may be a little different. It's a short chapter, and I don't know if I'm going to do any programs on this or not. It's on working with dates and strings. So we start with dates and times and then go into strings and then go into formatting both. So this may be kind of a quick, hopefully at least, will be kind of a quicker, goodness. All right. So as it says, to work with dates and times, you use a date time structure. And it has a lot of different things where you can, by default, when you create a date time value, you get the date and the time. You can pull out any one piece that you want. You can format it in multiple different ways. So when you look on here, again, typically that's the way you do it, date time, and then maybe like now or today equals new date time. You can give it different stuff if you want. If you don't put anything in there, it's going to come up with a current date and time. So here's one that they've set it to January 30th of 2023. Since they didn't put a time in, it defaults to midnight. Here's another one they put in, and notice this, it's military time. So that's 2:15 p.m. Here they put in daytime parse, so you can see what happened here and here. All right. You can notice, if you notice here, there's a lot of different valid date formats in there. There may even be more than those when you start talking about internationalization and other countries. All right. And they show some of the time ones that are in there as well. How to get the current date and time, as it says, if you come in there and you use a date time dot now, that gives you both. If you use a date time dot today, all right, it only gives you the date. And again, since you have not asked for a time, it defaults again to midnight. Probably one of the things you're going to be most concerned with is how to format. And notice there's a long date string that is shown first there with the word Monday, comma, January 30th, comma, 2023. Then there's a short one where there's not even a zero prefix before the one, and they use forward slashes and similar things with the time. All right, how to get information about dates and times. When you look in here, what you're going to notice is, and I've mentioned this before, you can grab virtually anything from the date, meaning just the month, just the day, just the year. The only thing you cannot technically grab from the time is, I think the time is right to the millisecond. So you can do hour, minute, and second, and that's it. The time of day is a neat one. Notice it says it returns a time span value, and that's the amount of time that has elapsed since midnight. All right, and they will talk about it a little bit later on in the chapter as well. Now, with a day of the week, notice it says it returns a number of the day of the week that represents the day of the week in date time value. Could be wrong on this, and maybe they have examples, but I believe that when you use that, the Sunday is 0. I could be wrong on that, but I think it starts with Sunday 0, Monday 1, Tuesday 2, Wednesday 3, Thursday 4, Friday 5, Saturday 6. I believe that's how it is. All right. You'll notice that a thing will return the number of days specified in a month. Plus, there's a built-in leap year, which is kind of nice because then you don't have to write your own. All right. And again, they've got some examples here that go through this. I realize I'm popping through this very quickly, but I don't see any reason where we have to spend a lot of time on this. All right. Now, as it says, 9.4 presents some of the methods of the date time structure. Most of these allow you to add specific intervals. So you can use a date time, and there's an add method, as it says, to add hours, days, or months. Time span values are based on a structure defined by the .NET .timespan values. So if you wanted more, you could take a look in there. But again, you should be plenty fine just taking a look at the examples that are shown in the chart here. All right. And there's all sorts of things you might want to set up. For instance, you might want to do an add days where you add 90. A lot of times when you send something out, payment is due in 90 days from the day it was sent out, that kind of an idea. All right. And again, as always, there are several examples here. So a time span, as it says, represents a period of time stored as ticks, I should say. You can use the days, hours, minutes, and second properties to get those particular things. Notice you can use a lot of different mathematical operators to work with date time values as well. All right, strings we've actually touched on a little bit. All right, and you start talking about some of the members of the string class. Now, when you look here, this is not an all-inclusive list. All right, and what you can do with a string is basically treat it as though it was an array of characters. So the first letter in the string would be an array sub-0, etc. You can get the length of the string. I'm not going to read these to you. You can see them. Anytime you see index of, and there's a few of them in here, and the substring that's here, that allows you to find a string within a string. All right, that's the idea behind a substring. And usually on these other things, when you are searching for something, all right, like index of, last index of, if it doesn't find anything, normally it returns -1. All right. And they've got some examples, as it says here, that works with strings. Will we do anything with this? Yeah. Will we do a lot with this? No. I mean, we hit it off and on in different spots throughout the semester. Okay. Even more examples that work with strings. So again, take a look at these. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. The split one is kind of neat because what split does is basically it takes a string and converts it into an array. All right, and you can tell it where the delimiters are. But some of these are neat. Adding hyphens to a phone number, replacing hyphens and date with slashes. So some of that stuff can be very useful. Okay, now I do want to spend a little bit of time on this. This is actually a fairly new section in here that I do not believe they had in the last version of the book. When you use string interpolation, what you can do, it's like using template literals, those of you who were in the JavaScript class last semester. But let's take a look at what's in here because it's easiest to show it with an example. So right here, notice like JavaScript, all right, you put the variables you want in curly braces. Unlike JavaScript, you use double quotes, you do not use backticks, and you start it with a $sign. All right. Again, the best way to look at this is to just go in and read the examples. All right. If that confuses you, I have no problem with, on here, you could have said string name equals last name plus a blank space, or I'm sorry, last name plus a comma and a space plus first name. So you can do this without using the interpolation. I will tell you that if you want to start coding the way, quote, professional programmers, unquote, the way that they program, you will use these methods whenever possible. But with some of you, at least, this is going to be your first class in the program. With others, it's the second class. And I've always said, especially with your first year in the program, you should be programming for understandability on your part. All right, we've looked a little bit at parse and try parse. All right, try parse means you are attempting to do something. Parse means you are actually doing it. All right. And I have used both in some of the examples. As it says, by default, commas, 1 decimal point, leading and trailing spaces are allowed when you use parse or try parse. If you want to restrict, you can put a second argument into parse or try parse and let the system know what you won't allow. All right. The string builder class is kind of neat. There's a string builder class I don't know if there really actually is one per se in JavaScript, and we might have even talked about it if there is. But strings are what are known as mutable. So in other words, just imagine this for a second. So let me bring this up here. So imagine I came in and said this: string first name equals Jeff. I put my first name in there. Now I'm going to put ... So later on in the program, I come in and they say, oh, they want my complete name. So I say first name equals Jeffrey. All right. What happens is when I did this value, and actually the equivalent zeros and ones of JEFF, they get stored somewhere in memory. Let's just say that they get stored in locations 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003. All right. So this wouldn't be actually a J, an E, an F, and an F, but it would be, like 00, whatever that is. But let's just imagine for a second it was J, E, F, and F. After you do this, there's no guarantee that locations 2004, 2005, and 2006 are going to be available. All right. So it's going to store it someplace else, possibly, for example, in 5000, 5001, 5002, 5003, 5004, 5005. You get the idea. 5006. And let's move this all over one. And finally, 5007. All right, so if we come down here then, we'd have J, just J, E, F, F, R, E, guess I made too much, and a Y. All right, I didn't even need that one. And when I say they're mutable, what it means is if you go and you set a value like this, it gets put into a certain place in memory. All right. And after it does that, after that happens, if the value that's in there gets changed, it gets put into a different place in memory. Then what happens is basically this area that you see right here, okay, it gets marked as being unused. Then when the operating system comes through with more or less a garbage cleanup type of program, it checks and it marks that and it says, hey, that's not being used. Then when it comes around and checks it a second time, if it still hasn't been used, it removes it. That's usually how this works, all right, with a garbage system. All right, but with a string builder, typically you can go build a string and it is rather than it being, and if I said this wrong before, I apologize, but strings are immutable. All right, a regular string like this, they're immutable. They can't be changed. All right, but string builders are mutable, which means that you can add to them and you can build them as you're going along. Plus, when you set it up, they automatically, if you don't give them a value, are set up to 16. All right. If you fill it up, it automatically doubles and becomes 32. If you fill that up, it doubles and it becomes 64, etc. But since these are mutable, you can put anything you want in, and typically that's what you do, and then you go and convert it to a string when you're all done. So as it says, string builder objects are mutable, which means they can be changed. All right, the last thing that's discussed in here is the formatting of numbers, dates, and times. Some of this we've looked at already. In other words, I have already used the N for number. All right, like saying N3 as an example. We've used C for currency. We've used P for percentage. And there's some other ones in here that you can use as well. I'm not going to go over any of them. All right, but you can do custom formatting. As it says, you can put in separators, etc., which might look a little bit, nicer. Sometimes it'll be done for you. Like if you format something for currency, it'll put in there by default a dollar sign. After every third digit, it'll put in a comma. It'll put in a decimal point and two numbers after the decimal point by default. So some of these are set up to work like that. Date you can format as well. I'm not going to read any of these. Again, if this becomes an issue, you can take a read on that. All right. And as it says, you can use interpolated expressions with this. Again, there are some examples in here. I'm not going over any of these. And that's pretty much it. All right. So before I go on, okay, we'll go on next to chapter 10, a little longer chapter, I guess. And it's working with different types of controls. All right, some of the stuff that's in here we won't have to spend much time on. For instance, how to use the message box class. I've already been showing you that since day one. All right, but I'll come back with chapters 10 and 11 in just a little bit, and I'll talk to you then.